Denny Walgren.
Jim Fletcher.
Brad Dix.
Introduction of any guests?
We do have several guests with us. I don't know everybody's name, but I believe they're all with Salina Tennis Alliance. That's right?
I'm just interested in this.
Oh, great.
Mark Finkel, I'm here on the train issue.
Okay, great. Matt, is this your
Yes.
gentleman that? Okay,
That is.
great. And Clark Renfro, and I'm sorry,
Frank Hampton?
Frank Hampton, there was Salina Tennis Alliance.
Very good. Citizens forum, anyone here wishing to speak about an item? Seeing none, I'll move on to approval of the agenda. Is there a motion?
I motion that we approve the agenda.
Thanks, and a second.
I'll second it.
Thanks. Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. You have minutes from the December 15th, 2021 regular meeting in your packet. If there are no additions or corrections, I would take a motion to approve those.
I'll motion we approve.
Thank you. And a second? Thank you. Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Activity reports. In your packet and provided by email. Anything staff wants to highlight or comments, questions from board members?
Yes, I could. This time of year normally is when I provide the tournament teams reports to
Okay.
you guys. I know Brad is interested in those too, but I did provide them to you, and it's separate. It's field house and then outdoor, so I can touch on a few things. Obviously, COVID did affect us immensely. But we are trying to rebound and get back to normal, whatever normal is. But I kind of added a notes column this year just to highlight those. In the field house, we did end up with 249 teams in 2021, and we were at I think 337 in 2020. If you remember right, we were closed starting in March, I believe, in 2020 all the way through November. So those 337 teams, most of them were just in January and February of 2020. So that kind of shows that how January and February are in the field house. Like right now, we're busy. But in 2019, we were starting to get rocking and rolling. If you remember right, we started in 2017. I really didn't include 2017 because we had a half a season then. I think our first tournament was in July of 2017 was our first one. So 2018 was our first full year, and we had 466 teams just in that first full year. Then went up to 514, and then COVID hit in March of 2020. So I just included all those tournament results for you just to analyze. Is there any questions on the field house or?
The field house tournaments that are marked canceled and then they move somewhere, do you expect them back or?
Good,
have a feel
yeah,
of any
good
of that?
question. I wanted to note that because they canceled here at the field house, but it doesn't mean that they didn't exist. They just went elsewhere.
Okay.
Not the field house. So I tried to keep up on that as much as possible, hearing where the tournaments did go, and noted if they went to Wichita. Some were even right here in Salina, TPEC, Webster. Just were not held in the field house itself.
How many of those that are listed for 2021, have they rescheduled for 2022? That may be in my packet.
Yes, most of them have rescheduled. Since COVID happened, I have experienced some reshuffling, I guess you'd say. Maybe want to go to a different weekend. but most want to come back and have that same specific weekend for them. We have lost a couple that I know of. One was at HOA volleyball, and it went to Kansas City, and I tried to get them back for this year, and that did not happen. Same with a few user groups. During COVID, they found a different place. Maybe they established one themselves. Taylor's, Twirlers comes off the top of my mind. They were in our field house every week. And then during COVID, I think she just got her private studio or something and just established her home there. But we did experience some of that they are found somewhere else and did not come back.
I was gonna say, I noticed World Basketball, they
Wor-
were new.
World Class, yeah, they were new on the scene here about 2 years ago, I believe, and wanting to have they're asking for weekends available, so, which is another basketball organization, which is a good thing. Any other questions on the field house? I can move on to the outdoor. Again, I did provide some notes in there. I think some of those were affected by numbers with COVID. Did see some reshuffling there too as well. As if you remember, in 2020, it was kind of ran by a volunteer group, so a lot changed during that time. But 2021, we're seeing most of their tournaments back on their existing weekends. So I listed some of those there. One thing I noticed was the number of adult tournaments have kind of fallen off. Adult slow pitch. We do have some rescheduled for this coming year. And then I did list some numbers there, totals, just to kind of compare. Believe it or not, I think my first year here was 2006. I do have all that information as well. But dating back to, 2016, I think I just started there. The average was 30 tournaments a year, and we're in that 600 number of teams total. So pretty consistent, anywhere from 600 to 617 teams and outdoor tournaments for City of Salina facilities, which is pretty darn good. And then when COVID hit in 2020, then I noted that there it was run by volunteer groups, and then that was we ended up with 343 teams that year, last year in 2020, and then we did see some increase there this past 2021 as well, as we're trying to rebound.
As I look through this, one of the things that comes to mind, Travis, I see we got a chamber. Are you guys working with the chamber to try to reinitiate some of these relationships?
Seems like every day, every week, we talk a lot about ideas of what we can do.
Events that are coming back this month.
I gotta get a drink.
Encounter, which is the homeschool educators group, the basketball tournament. I'm sure they would come back to the field house, and they are looking very forward to coming back to the field house at the end of the month. And also the gymnastics and the extreme winter, I think it's Winter Wonderland, it's the Sky Trampoline gymnastics event. Both of those events are over 400 people easy. And I think that the Smoky Valley Hoops Encounter was one that went to Webster when the field house wasn't open. So that's one of the reasons we weren't sure if they would come back. And they actually reached out to us to make sure they could come back.
It kind of looks like the youth tournaments are kind of bouncing back pretty well. I didn't
Yeah.
see the adult. I mean, I look at, going back to 2019, there were 75 adult tournaments, and the 86 in 2018. Do you feel like those may have a chance to come back?
I think a little bit. We're working on that. We got more scheduled this coming year, I know that, than we did the previous 2 years. So we're trying there.
Okay. What do you think was the big reason behind the adult softball?
The heyday of adult softball is over.
Is it?
You know, from our area of you had out there, East Crawford at that time, you had leagues every night, you know, and tournaments about every week, and it's just changed. And a lot of those tournaments will occur in Wichita or Kansas City, yeah. And we'll grasp a few, but we're not going to grasp all of them away from Kansas City or Wichita. And we do have, we lost a staff member during that time. And so we do got a new staff member on, and he's been instructed to kind of focus and try to get some of those back.
Okay.
I'm digging a little bit here, kind of trying to refresh my mind. Do we still have rec league adult softball?
We do. We ran it in the fall, and we anticipate running adult softball again next fall, maybe a late summer, just because of the official shortage that we're experiencing to battle youth leagues and adult leagues both in the spring and summer. We're very cautious about what we're offering because of the official shortage. Just to note on that, we're running a youth basketball league in the field house, and it's traditionally been on Tuesday nights with 4 courts running jam-packed. We're only offering 2 courts now, and 2 courts on Tuesday and 2 courts on Wednesday, just because of the official shortage. And yours truly wore stripes last week for the first time in 20 years, just because of the official shortage, and I was sore. But back to the, I wanted to provide these to you. I know you guys are interested to see how we're doing tournament-wise. There you go. If you have any questions, be glad to answer them.
Any comments, questions from members, or anything you all want to talk about?
There's a few additional items in your packet. You probably made note of just some, greeting cards that we received from the public. Also, Rick attached a few pictures in here about a memorial bench at Lakewood Park. And then also to note in the activity report, we had 2 special events in December, the Mayor's Christmas Party and the noon New Year's Eve event.
Very good. Moving on to new business. Item 7A, Salina Tennis Alliance naming rights and project.
So the city of Salina has a naming rights procedure and policy. There's 5 steps to the policy. One of those steps is to bring the naming initiative up to an appropriate board. The naming rights initiative is for the future Salina Tennis Complex, which was the former municipal pool, which there is a public-private partnership with Salina Tennis Alliance, and they are here before you today to present that naming initiative. And I'd like to invite that group up there, probably Clark Renfro, and they have a presentation to go through with you, and we have it on the big screen. And I'll hand it over to Clark.
Thank you, Jeff. Well, thanks for allowing us to be here today. I'm here with Frank Hampton, representing Salina Tennis Alliance. I want to start off just kind of giving you a brief history of how we got where we are and where we're going, and kind of next steps. This has been a long haul, but certainly fruitful, and we're excited about where it's headed. The naming rights aspect of it has been a key part of our fundraising efforts. We started roughly 2019 in addressing actually before that, 2018, in addressing the problem that we have locally on the city public tennis courts, and really started aggressively in 2019 raising funds to be able to go before the city to say that we've got the interest and the momentum to complete a public-private partnership. So in 2019, we had some pretty large lead gifts to get us launched and jump-started, give us momentum. November of 2020, we went before the city commission and they awarded us, approved a resolution to declare all Kenwood Park located in the parameters of Kenwood Drive and Midway to be considered qualified under the city facility naming guidelines. So we had that footprint, had the opportunity to go ahead and solicit donations and naming opportunities, and had success there, and we appreciate the opportunity to have that before us. In March of this past year, the City Commission provided the resolution of support for the project. We, at that point, probably, I think at that point, had raised $1.3 million. Today, we're almost nearly $2 million towards the project of private funding. And then August of this past year, we officially got the green light to move forward and signed a contract with the city to build the courts. In September, we began clearing the site where the former Muni pool was and rodeo arena to prepare that for construction. And then this past December, the bids went out, and then we had those due right towards the end of the month. I can't remember the exact date. And we went through the process per the contract to determine that choice. So we've now made that decision. We've gone through the contractual obligations, and now we've got to go before the city commission to get to the next step. And we hope to have the courts in place this summer. So the bids came in really well, a little less than what we had originally estimated, which is always a good thing. And the timeline to complete was good, and really couldn't have asked for a better scenario. Now it's just a matter of going through the steps and ensuring that we've got all our bases covered. So that's kind of where we are today. I want to talk a little bit about the naming rights and what we did there. Again, we had some original lead gifts that when we were soliciting funds, the overall support of this project has been overwhelming. And so a lot of these initial gifts were like, hey, what do you need to get this started? There wasn't anything, say, hey, I want this named after me. It's like, hey, we know you, it's kind of the cart before the horse. The city wants to see us raising funds. People that donate want to see the city committed to it. So you've got a balancing act there. But really it went extremely well. And the initial lead gifts was like, here, let's make this thing happen and get this going. So when we went out and we did solicit for naming rights, we decided, okay, we've got lead gifts that helped us get us here, then we're going to kind of price this out and how we can determine how we need to get from point A to point B. So we had anything from $50,000 up to $500,000 range for facility naming, building, shade shelter, courts, hitting wall, and then what we call matching doubles gift available, meaning somebody could go in with a neighbor or a partner and say, hey, we'll give halves, and each of us will make up that, and we'll call the court or shelter. We haven't had anybody do that, but certainly wanted to present that opportunity out there. So we have not had, the $500,000 was an opportunity to name the facility. We have not had that, nor have we really needed it. And we think as an opportunity presents itself, we can truly call this a City of Salina Tennis Center. Now we need to go forward and how we want to formulate that. There could be a gift that comes through between now and construction that says, hey, we want that named, and Bill Gates walks through the door and we want to have that opportunity. But at this stage of the game, that has not been taken. We also have opportunities for concession stand, bleachers. Those have not been taken. Most of what you'll see today are courts, naming rights, and then the pavilion or the shelter house. Then we want to recognize donors. We look to have a donor wall. We're determining right now that looks to appear to be a outside wall on the building, and we're still trying to configure what the size and shape based upon cost, but have some examples of some pictures there and how we want to recognize donors at the facility. And again, we want to give you at least some ideas of what we're looking at and how that might take shape. The giving levels we've got, really there isn't anything fancy about what particular levels are and what you get. There aren't any perks. It's just here are the levels, and anybody that gives over 500 will be recognized on the donor wall. So that's how we are approaching that. Again, I can't tell you how, Frank and I have been involved in most of the fundraising, and it's been a joy to go out and tell our story and hear people talk about, the project and what they can do to help. So it's been a lot of fun. Next slide are primarily the courts that we're looking at. There's going to be 12 courts with lights, and this is an opportunity for the city of Salina with the 12 courts to provide not only recreational opportunities that don't exist today, but also competitive and tournament opportunities to come in. And the lighting will be key too, so you can play pretty much anytime during the day or night. So these folks here, as you see, Salina Regional Health Center, Long MacArthur, these are how they want the names to appear on the court, and we'll get into a little bit more detail on how that might look and what we're suggesting. Long MacArthur, that's kind of a long name, but they've got Lincoln, which is obviously everybody's familiar with the Lincoln brand, Black Label, and they're providing funds for the court. Queen Jean happens to be in honor of Jean Boardman, which is a local tennis player that's done a lot for the game here, and they wanted to honor her. So that's how they want their court to read. Most of the others are pretty clear-cut. You've got some charitable trusts involved, some other businesses here. The Kansas Westland, I've got a question mark on that. Since then, there was a gift made in Kansas Westland's name under Mac Steele, and Mac is a local philanthropist that's done a lot for a lot of different things. And we weren't sure how they wanted to present that because he wanted to do it on behalf of Kansas Westland, and Kansas Westland wanted to certainly accept that, but in the court naming right wanted to name that the Mac Steele Court instead of them. So that happened within the last 5 days and didn't have an opportunity to update the slide. And then the others are folks that wanted in the family name, and you'll see the names listed there. So 10 of the 12 courts have been spoken for. Will the other 2 come to fruition? We've been working with businesses and families, so that may or may not come to fruition. Those are some things that I think in all likelihood they will, but they have not been spoken for at this point. So that covers that. The facility map, again, this is subject to change, but this is kind of the layout of how those courts will look in each of the respective courts. The hitting wall you'll see is kind of to the left of the top 3 courts, and that's another site that will have a naming right opportunity to it. It's facing to the north there. It's kind of a half tennis court with a wall, but those are something that will be used quite often. And then, of course, you've got the facility itself, which it has an opportunity to have its naming rights put on it as well, which has not been spoken for. You'll see up in the upper right-hand corner, there's 2 courts there. Those are alternate courts, which at this point will not be part of the plan. Our original plan was for 12 courts, and certainly we look at adding more into the future, but that's there just to get a sense of where that might look like. Signs and dimensions. I'm going to go into that next slide, and then we come back to this, but give you an idea of kind of what these are looking like or what we propose to look like. Can you go to the next slide? So certainly the Roger Federer family would love to have them part of this, but that's the sign that will look about that size. We're looking again at getting quotes, but we don't want them too large, too small, but certainly want to have the recognition of the donors. And then the court number is pretty standard within the tennis world. Each court will have a court number. So if you're in a tournament or you're in a match and you've got, a match, you're going to be placed on court 1 through 12, and so that's a way to identify that. The plan right now is to have the court donor name inside the court at a certain location. Certainly on the courts that are on the south side, probably have that on the south end, and then on the courts on the north side, have it on the north end, but to be determined. The color is we want to match the courts and kind of make it somewhat universal throughout the facility. The courts will be blue and the exterior will be green. And the rationale behind that is if you're a tennis fan and you watch the US Open or some other tournaments, you'll see that the color of the courts are either blue or green, and that's by design by picking up the tennis ball. There's a PMS color blue that the US Open uses that brings the color of the yellow ball out better on television than any other, and for the players for that matter. So we want to really recreate that same type of concept with our courts. And so, again, kind of coordinate it with the city of Salina's colors too, which works out well. But that's a color that really, when you look at the elite level, that's what they're using. So we look to have that instilled, and then that green kind of plays off that as well. Size, we're still working on some size but that's, I've mentioned down here 12 by 18 or 27 by 5'3". A lot of it's going to be dictated by the name of the donor. Certainly with the Long MacArthur sign, there's going to be, we found out within the last several days that they have some requirements for their font or for their logo for Lincoln to be able to coordinate with them on the donation. So I don't have that as part of the slide. I did bring a picture of what that looks like. And we're working with them, and we'll need certainly some direction from you all. But this is kind of, they need it to be black and then white lettering. So we may need to, for their purposes, make that sign. We're not going to make it any larger or smaller than the other signs. They'll just have to fit what they've got in there. But part of their donation is based upon Lincoln is having that font and then that background color. So we think we can work within the confines of that request, but that is unique to their request. And then just some more pictures here. That's, again, some court numbering. Again, you can see the color of the courts there, blue and green. And then the donor wall, these are some samples. That one up in the upper left is from a facility in Lincoln, Nebraska. And then the one below that is at the field house. So we look to have something similar. Again, we're pricing that out. We don't want to make it too small, too large, but certainly we want to have an opportunity to recognize the donors and have it within the facility where you have some security with it as you enter the facility. You can recognize those folks that contributed. And then another option is something like this, where we've got an opportunity as you add donors, you have space to put that on. We'd like to be able to initiate it upon construction, because there's people still giving donations upon construction. Then we say, hey, here are the donors. But we know there are other opportunities for people to come in later to give money, and we want to have that, hopefully, option to be able to add those names there. We also plan to have a website that will recognize the donors as well, and that's kind of a dynamic thing as those come and go and change. Last slide. Many of you may know the current courts at Oakdale are called the Ken Nordbo Tennis Facility, and Ken was a advocate for tennis for many years, as his family has. And I know the family well, knew Ken, and we've been able to keep them close to this project. They're very supportive of it. Obviously, they know that the Ken Nordbo Tennis Facility will be going away, but we wanted to recognize him in some fashion, and we talked with them about perhaps having a plaque or something that, to recognize Ken and his contributions to the game and to the community. So that kind of summarizes our pitch there, and would welcome any questions or comments.
Questions or comments?
You know, as I look through this, I guess the first thing I'd say is thank you for all the work you've done. This has been a long project, I know, and a lot of conversations through the years. The donor walls, I think they're all really sharp. I like the one where you can add to it, and I guess one of the things I would note is for a timeless project, future donations may be encouraged to keep this up. I'd hate to see this be built up and made really nice and left alone for 30 years, and then we're starting all over again.
Absolutely. I will say this, and Jim, you're spot on, is Salina Tennis Alliance was created to really handle the contractual obligations to get the courts built, but also at the same time created to be an advocacy group for tennis, similar to what Baseball Enterprises has done for a long time. They're very well organized, and they've done a lot of good things. Tennis has arguably been one of the strongest sports, if not the strongest sport in this community for 60-plus years. But it's been that way through volunteers and no formal entity. With Salina Tennis Alliance, we will have that opportunity to continue to raise funds, to continue to look after and take care of that facility so we're not in this same spot again. And that's something that I know donors have commented on too, is, you know, hey, this is an investment, and we don't want to see that turn back into deferred maintenance issues. So, absolutely.
Any other questions, comments? Today you need from us just
I need a recommendation.
recommendation
that I
to
can-
approve.
From the Parks and Rec Advisory Board that I can take to the city commission for a January 24th resolution, if you will, to the naming initiative for Salina Tennis Alliance.
Okay.
Mr. Grant, I move that we approve the proposal made by Salina Tennis Alliance and recommend it to the city commission.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Brad seconds. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Thank you so
All
much.
right, appreciate it, guys.
Also, just as a note, also on the January 24th meeting, there will be a study session about an operational model of this court, of these courts that Salina Tennis Alliance would like to propose as well.
Okay. Item
When
7.
you say operational model, what do you mean by operational? How the facility is going to be taken care of? And
Who's gonna, Salina Tennis Alliance would like the opportunity to operate the facility on a day-to-day basis.
in terms of when it would be actually open for the public?
Correct.
I mean, it's not going to just be open like, you know, the other tennis facilities in town.
There will be public options to play. We're still working out some of those details. However, it will be a publicly available facility.
Okay. Bill Burke, Bollards.
In your packet, I just wanted to make you aware of this, and I can let, Travis and I kind of worked together a little bit. We're getting a baseball bollard installed sometime in the next 2 months at Bill Burke Park. Travis did a lot of work to try to find the right one and get the best price. So we've ordered those. So there'll be decorative baseball-style bollards for Bill Burke Park. As many of you know, and I can let Travis speak about this a little more, about some of the parking issues and the volume of people at Bill Burke Park. And where there's a map of where these bollards are going to go. They're quite heavy, so they can try to encourage people less from parking in grass areas or in no parking areas, and also add a little bit of class to the facility.
Yeah, we've had quite the discussions here in the last year of renovating Bill Burke. The issues that we incur at Bill Burke, parking was one of them, and got some direction from the city manager to look into these. And again, from the decorative portion of it, you know, spruce it up a little bit to help cure some of our parking issues that we do incur down there. I encourage you to go down there on a summer night and look at some of the issues that we deal with on a daily basis. So the facility's quite packed, and we just want to keep people safe at the same time, and then, you know, spruce up the facility. So that's the direction that we went. And again, as Jeff said, here in the next month or so, hopefully we get these and install them before the season They are quite heavy. Got to do some concrete pads for them. And so we got some work yet to do, but we just wanted to let you know what we were doing there.
Very good. I've only ever parked in approved parking spots at Bill Burke, but I'm sure it will take care of issues for others, so others are causing.
Is there ever going to be more parking at Bill Burke, or is that in the future plans? Or?
Well, to answer your question, we got two more stalls within this plan. Has there been a lot of discussion about it? There has, but it's just kind of an overall, what are we going to do type thing. It's convenience, of instead of parking clear down at the north because you have a game on Bill Burke #2. I get it, been there, done it, and when people express their opinions to me as I'm walking by, I'm right there with them. I'm walking clear from the north to the field. So yes, we're going to have those discussions about parking there.
Yeah, I've always wondered why there's not a parking lot on the other side of Crawford. There's
That's-
a nice walking trail.
Has been discussed, I can tell you that. Just, does it come down to monies, those type of things? And in case you guys didn't know, that we're in a floodplain there. So we have that to conquer as well, so.
Peachjar Advertising?
Yes, I just wanted to note that strikes my name, or it strikes me, it was a superintendent, and him and I had the discussions, this was in the around 15, 16s, about we were doing flyers back at that time, and running thousands and thousands of copies, and they gave us a grid at Oakdale, you have this many, and we put them in sections of each classroom and everything. We did all that just to let the public know of what programs we do have to offer. Works out great, and what even worked better was the Peachjar program. It was paperless. We were trying to go that direction, and certainly during COVID, it was the right thing to do. And so we noticed continued participation, when we went to Peachjar, even an increase in participation in our programs. And it only took them a year, but it got going, and it was definitely a good resource for us to advertise what we do have going on, program-wise or in the community. Free programs didn't matter. It was just a good source to reach to the public. And then that Peachjar was discontinued, I think, last year. And we would just like to maybe reach out to the board to see what your opinions were with Peachjar and see if we can get that going again. I'll give you an example. I do know our high school basketball program. When I had my hands into it, personally running it, we had upwards of 24 teams. And this year we have 4, and could you attribute COVID to that? Sure. We're seeing 60% to 70% of normal of what we've done. But I truly believe it's because we can't get to those students. So I would just ask, and I know there's maybe some USD members here that maybe put that on the table to reconsider again.
Is that, explain, I guess is this a city piece? Is this a school district piece? Is this?
When it was started, it was just us and maybe a few other organizations of the YMCA, just a few, that were getting our programs to USD, whoever had an email address, and it would go to the moms and the dads that would get an email once a month maybe, or once a season, and it lists the opportunities that were available in the community. And instead of the old paper flyer, and my daughter was guilty of it, the paper flyer, the kids got it, and guess where it ended up? in the bottom of their backpack, and my daughter was one of them. I asked where that flyer was, and it was in the bottom of her backpack. So this was an avenue of Peachjar to electronically get that information to the parents, to review what's going on in the community, opportunity to sign up for basketball, Easter egg hunt, whatever you want to do, but at least it was an avenue to get out there. And then we did pay per school that it went to.
To add a little more to that, I believe, to answer your question, I hope it was a partnership with the school district.
Yes.
I believe it was something that the schools provided as an opportunity to several entities in the city, including ourselves.
And we did, again, pay the USD, because I'm not sure of the fees from USD to Peachjar, but we did pay USD directly for each school that we wanted the flyers to be distributed to.
Okay. And Peachjar is a software, I'm assuming, that
Yes.
USD 305 had?
Maybe contracted with, there is, yes. Like I said, I'm not sure on that piece, what relation or dealings with USD and the Peachjar software had.
I don't know that.
I remember you talking about it, but I don't see any Peachjar things come through my 305,
Account,
but I don't have children in the
yeah.
district anymore either.
So it goes to those live email addresses that parents have to provide to get Skyward and grades and that type of thing. It's the same database that they use to distribute.
I would think at the least we could sure get you in touch with the right person in the district who could help answer questions.
Sure. Thank you.
Annual board training presentation.
If I may.
Yes.
If we do have a guest here regarding a train, and I would like to allow the
Yeah.
board to have them talk, and I'll end with the board training,
That's great.
if you're okay with that, Mr. Grant.
For sure. Talk about the training, sir?
Yeah. My name's Mark Dinkle, and I'm a big train fan. My parents met on a passenger train of the Union Pacific, and they both worked for it afterwards. And I was just reading these minutes from the last meeting, and one of the ideas was to sell this locomotive that's over 120 years old for scrap. And that really kind of incensed me because it's a piece of history, and there aren't very many of them left. If you look at steam locomotives, most of them were scrapped by railroads, including entire classes. And current generations of rail fans come to lament that. Union Pacific at one time had 100 Challenger locomotives, and just 2 exist today. They saved the big boys, and the big boys were saved partly as a result of the Challengers being scrapped. Ed Bailey was CEO of Union Pacific in I think the 1950s. He has a yard named after him. The largest classification yard in the world at North Platte is named Bailey Yard. And his daughter was in North Platte one day and saw one of these Challengers, one of the few remaining ones, sitting in a shop, and it was being used to melt snow at switch points. It's a huge locomotive, a Challenger is, and almost the size of a big boy, that comes through Salina once a year or so, and then we see the big boy come. There were more of those saved. There were 25 of them, and 6 were saved. But his daughter was in the shop at North Platte, and she was told that this Challenger was going to be scrapped, sent for scrap the next day. And she got on the phone and called her dad. And her dad said, so long as I'm president of this railroad, there will not be another steam locomotive scrapped. And as a result of that phone call, the big boys were saved, that Challenger was saved, and that Challenger now sits in Cody Park in North Platte, Nebraska. If you look on the internet, you can see pictures from the North Platte Telegraph about how such a giant locomotive was moved to that location just north of the city. Similar fate befell the locomotive in Kenwood Park. And in my days of growing up, I remember the time when Kenwood Park had a miniature train that was powered by coal, and parents would take their children over there, and you could go ride behind this steam locomotive that was actually powered by coal. They had a coaling tower there, a little short one, and it would run around a circle, and it would be a thing to do. But that's long ago. That was in the 1960s, and that's been a long time. But it would be a shame for this locomotive just to be sold for scrap. That's 120 years old. I think I'm going to have to do some research once I get home, but once I saw that there, I thought, well, is it time to try and add this locomotive to the National Register of Historic Places to grant it some protection or something from that sort of a disposition? Any disposition would be better than that for number 477. But one of the things that I think might be the best disposition for this train is we've seen Union Pacific move out of Union Station, basically. If you go by Union Station now, they used to base crew there. If you go by it now, there are aluminum panels up over the windows. I have talked with, through emails, Mayor Hodges about the disposition of Union Station and whether Salina might be in a position to acquire that soon. And she had talked with city staff and was told that the railroad was still using at least the communications tower there. But if you drive by there, there's no cars there anymore. There used to be cars there in the parking lot. That station was built in 1916. It's 105 years old. When it was constructed, the railroad brought over artisans from Italy to lay tile in there. And in my days of traveling by train out there before Amtrak in 1971, and passenger rail service ended to Salina, it was a beautiful station. It had an arched ceiling inside, and I noticed tile, but I didn't appreciate it until I did some historical research on that structure about what the railroad did to build that place. If you consider Salina as a city of opportunity, then you must consider the station as its beacon during its day. That's how people arrived here. That's how this town grew. The best disposition for that locomotive, in my view, would be for Salina to acquire the station and move the locomotive to that site and create an additional, I guess, attraction or beacon, a new beacon, like a new birth of freedom, a new beacon of opportunity for this city, and to draw people to it. I would hope that going forward, I see what Topeka did with their station. If you haven't seen Topeka Union Station, you should see it. There is, in the waiting room, there's a level that tells you how high the waters came into that station during the Kansas River floods. Santa Fe lost 2 steam locomotives during that Kansas River flood because they parked them on the bridge and they ended up in the Kansas River. They avoided scrapping, but they're somewhere down in the bottom of the river, and I don't know that anybody's ever found them. to this date. But look at what Topeka did to their station to envision the possibilities that we have here in Salina for our heritage. The Topeka Union Station continued on after the flood. And actually, there was a train named the City of Salina. I have a model of it at home. Union Pacific named a train, the first internal combustion streamlined train produced by railroads was named the City of Salina. And it was called Little Zip, and it ran from Kansas City to Salina, and then back to Topeka to Salina. Made several trips a day between Salina and Kansas City as a streamliner. The Topeka, and it stopped and served the Topeka station. The Topeka station went on and past the end of passenger railroading. Amtrak didn't serve the Topeka station. It ran on the Santa Fe line. But the Topeka station continued on, and later on, 1980s, 1990s, it was situated near a homeless mission. And some homeless entered the station and were occupying it, and a fire got out of control and nearly destroyed the station. The city got money under the Ice-T Act to help that station, and they, between city and private contributions, it looks, I was never in it as a kid, but it looks beautiful, whatever they did. They roofed it, they kept the display consistent with its original purpose, and exhibited railroad history inside. They have some railroad equipment parked outside. Some of one of the big boys that was saved, number 4004 in Cheyenne, Wyoming, has a nice fence around it. Cheyenne, Wyoming just spent $1 million to bring that engine cosmetically up to purpose. And Cheyenne, I think, estimates that about 25,000 people visit the city every year just to see it. It's a huge one. Ours is much smaller, but ours is also much older. And at 120 years, I would ask that the city consider options for it other than scrapping, and I think any disposition would be better than that. But to me, the greater purpose going forward would be to combine that with the station as an overall goal and go forward in that light. And I appreciate the opportunity to address you on the subject. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Two things. Andrea passed out an additional piece of paper. That's the Citizen Board Annual Reports. That's the advisory board's homework. If you recall, last year we did a similar exercise where Morgan sent out the minutes from previous meetings from the year, and you went through and identified some of your top 3 or 5 accomplishments and top 3 or 5 goals that you might have for 2022, and then other items of interest. I would ask that you do that again. When Morgan returns to the office, I'm going to have her send a reminder next week. And if I can get those back from you first part of February, that'd be outstanding. And then we would compile them and have them for your review in February's packet to approve or not. And last thing, if you allow me to do so, I'll go through this annual board training. If you give me 5 minutes, I think I can get through it.
Okay.
Every year this is a requirement, and we're not sure how consistent we've been in doing this There's a quick agenda. The next page is just organizational review, a slide about city departments and different partnerships that the city has. This is a standard training document, so it's, I did gear some of the comments for Parks and Rec Advisory Board. Some of the City of Salina boards and commissions. As you can see, we have many different boards and commissions that have our citizens on board. Under Parks and Recreation, well, I'll get that to that in a minute. Next slide, please. Organizational chart. Now, this is a little bit outdated. There's been some changes to this organizational chart. Next slide would be our Parks and Recreation mission statement and some of our different divisions. It's 5 divisions in Parks and Recreation: Recreation, Parks, Animal Services, Golf Course, Facilities Maintenance, and the departments also represents the agreement with the organization that operates Tony's Pizza Event Center. Our Parks and Recreation boards, of course, this board. We also have an Animal Control Advisory Board that meets 4 times a year, quarterly. And we also have a Tree Advisory Board. Conduct and expectations. And I'm not going to read every word of this to you. There are documents that are available to you, and if you wish to have some of these documents, I can certainly forward them to you. The rules and procedures for conducting boards and commissions. Keep in mind that attendance is monitored by staff. We do keep a record of attendance, and that's reported to at the end of each year. And there is a procedure if people end up not being able to come or stop coming. There is a procedure for that to rectify that. Some of your responsibilities: being in attendance, listening, engaging. We do have the opportunity for youth members of the board. We haven't had anybody apply to be interested as a youth member. Anybody that's a youth member does not, they are here, but they do not have a vote, and they cannot make motions. The City of Salina has an applicant process on their website, so anybody that you want or expresses interest can apply to be part of a board. Any board, any of the boards you saw before you on a previous slide. Some of the additional responsibilities on the next slide. It's our responsibility to prepare packets and agendas. And we have a chair, vice chair, and for this board, our secretary is a staff member. The ethics policy, which was enacted by Resolution 17-7463. And again, that's another, there is a document available. If you wish to read it, I can get it for you. Please let me know. And some of the items in that policy: ex parte communication, conflict of interest. I think we've talked about COMA before, Kansas Open Meeting Act. We do have a responsibility to make sure the public is aware of this meeting, that they have access to this meeting. It's in a public setting. What's the next slide? Yeah, conducting business. We are required to have a quorum. And types of meetings that we concur: study sessions, regular meetings, annual meetings, special meetings. Kansas Open Records Act, which is something you've heard of, like freedom of information requests. Parliamentary procedures. Again, there is a document out there that I can provide you about parliamentary procedure, about making motions, seconding motions. Does anybody have any questions or would like to request any of those documents? There will be a document that I don't have in front of me today that just says you went through, had the opportunity to receive board training. And that's all I had regarding that.
Questions or comments for anyone there? Do not hear it. Any questions on any of that? Nope. Thank you. Feel well trained. So, any old business? Not seeing any listed. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I don't have anything listed, but I just thought I'd give you guys an opportunity to hear me since I haven't had a chance to say anything. Thanks, Travis.
Sorry, Rick.
No, I appreciate it, actually. Yeah. Just a little bit more on the train. When I did present that, there were basically two options. One, I've got somebody that's going to look at the train. He hasn't been able to make it to town yet, but to see, number one, if there's a value for it, and this individual looks at them more to refurbish them, not necessarily to scrap them. So I just wanted to make that clarification. Now, scrapping them is an option, I guess, but that will be determined if we sell it or not sell it, kind of where to go with that. So I hope to have some more information about that from this individual that does that for the next board meeting.
Very good. Yes, sir.
If there's a possibility, if they take the old railroad station down there, if they were to move the train there, and then have, like, say, volunteers from the public to clean it up, paint it, whatnot, how is that possible?
Well, I think anything's possible. We just need to have, if it's going to be moved, we have to have a good location to go to, and then there has to be some financial backing to get you, you don't just put it on, haul it with a pickup and move it, so,
No.
yeah.
I don't think
Just
my
all of
people
those
haul it.
things, there just have to be a lot of steps and procedures to try and do that. And I don't think we aren't opposed to anything right now. It's just more, when I brought that, it was just more, here's some options that we do have. And considering that we were looking at anywhere between $11,000 and $14,000 to just put a fence around that to keep people off of it. And as I mentioned, it was just liability type issues with people crawling on it and possibly falling off.
Very good. Thank you. Glad your name made it in the minutes. So,
Yeah.
any general announcements for the good of the cause? If not, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to move to adjourn.
Thank you. In a second.
I'll second.
Thanks, Denny. Motion in a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries 6-0. Thank you all for being here.